Hello, my name is Ebrima Sarr. I am working as a graduate assistant at the University of the Gambia, School of Information Technology and Communication. I designed this tutorial for the University of the Gambia, School of Information Technology Communication Association ITCA for the summer training that they are embarking on. Thanks to Fat Site, Ginoy, Seni Jaju, and all the executive of the University of the Gambia ICT Association for the initiative. It's a great initiative and we would like to keep it up and we would love to help at any time of need. It's a comprehensive tutorial on using Microsoft Excel 2016. I designed this tutorial to serve as a learning tool for anyone who wishes to learn Excel, even those who have graduated for years. We will start with the absolute basis and then proceed with the most commonly used features in today's business environment. The goal is to empower you with the familiarity and knowledge so that you can add Excel as a technology tool to your technology toolkit to advance your studies, careers, and resumes. So please stick with me while we take this journey together. The concept that you learn here applies also to the previous version of Excel, such as Excel 2004, 13, 2010, and 2007. So spend a few minutes here and there in this tutorial and you will end up saving hours in the future. Let's get started. First, the very basic concept. And before we move any further here in Microsoft, in our study of Microsoft Excel, one of the new features in Excel 2016 is the Tell Me feature. This is available in Words and other applications of Microsoft Office as well. So if you don't know how to do something, you could click on the Tell Me function, this little bar. In the Microsoft Excel 2016, you will have the Tell Me function here. You can just click it and type whatever you want to do, not necessarily knowing where to do it or how to do it. If you cannot, just go to the Tell Me option here and then tap it and type what you want to do, and Microsoft will help you to find exactly how to do that. It's a good feature that as you get to know in 2016, it's not available in the previous version of Excel. So as I mentioned, first thing first, the first time you open Excel, this is what you're going to be presented. Here on the left side, you have a list of recent documents that you might have open, and then also here on the bottom left, you can open other Excel file or workbooks that you might have worked in the past. On the right hand side is the listing of various templates that you could utilize for using Excel. So in this case, instead of you having to, let's say, do a billing statement or blood pressure tracking or expenses report, before you start from scratch, you could pick one of these templates, double click on it, and then it will be downloaded, and all you have to do is plug in the numbers here. So let's go back here. Let's go back here. Additionally, you can search by various categories and you can search online templates and download in a various way. Now, as we are starting here, I want to also explain how you get started with the first workbook and the different components in the application so that you can easily and effectively navigate in the application as you start using it. So once you open Excel for the first time, if you're starting from scratch, you simply click here on the blank workbook. At this point, let's navigate a little bit and understand how the application works before we move to anything else. On the very top here, you have the file menu and various different tab: home, insert, page layout, formulas, and so on. Those are very similar to other Microsoft applications such as Word and PowerPoint and so on. The idea is the same. So you have the home tab, which have all of these different sets of icons and functions to what they do. Those are also arranged together in various groups. For example, anything related to the font is under the font section or grouping. Anything under the alignment that you need to align the text and so on for different cells is also on the alignment group. Anything related to numbers is under the numbering group, and then anything related to style is under the style section as well. and that continue from tab to tab, the same idea. It is also important to understand also those tabs are organized just like in what in a very particular order, but mostly depending on what you're doing. Sorry, and how you're working on the spreadsheet. So, for example, you might be thinking of initial designing calculation. Those calculation and design stuff are in the home tab, starting with the font, alignment, number, style, and some basic calculation here. You can insert other stuff such as formulas, table, recommended chart, and all this stuff. You can also go to the layout and change the layout of your document. You can go to the formula and manipulate your data and review the document and view and change the viewing of your worksheet. Here in the bottom, you also have the scrolling bar. Typically, you might have one or more worksheet in here in the bottom. Now, let me explain this to a couple of times in Excel. First, Excel is designed for you to do calculations, just like budgets or projections or anything that has or that you want the computer to calculate sales or value by formula. You probably have the term spreadsheet. Spreadsheet is just a file that contains those calculations and is typically utilizing Excel or something of a spreadsheet software. In Excel, those files could be referred as workbook. Sometimes you might hear the term workbook. So the workbook and worksheet are used interchangeably. Now the other thing that to remember here in a workbook, you have what's called the worksheets. The worksheets are those, think of it like a pages on a book. So you have, for example, sheet one. Here you could add another sheet and have a sheet two, and you can add more and have sheet three, and so on. Now, as you enter calculation, and we will get to those in a moment, in your specific worksheet, you can link those calculation with other values in other worksheets as well. Now, those worksheets, they make up the workbook. Now, in each worksheet, you also have, and again, please take note, these are very basic, but you have to understand the basic in order to do the next steps in this tutorial. So in a particular workbook or even worksheet here, you have these columns A, B, and so on. And you also have the rows. So we have the columns by the letters here, and the rows are represented by numbers. Then you also have those cells, which is, this is referred to as B3. That will be the reference for the cell, B3, and so on. So the cells that we have also clicked at this point is referred to as the active cells. Now in each one of those cells, you can insert text like we inserted up here. You can insert numbers and format those numbers as general numbers or currency or percentage. We can format the cell to be percentage, or we can format it to be a plain text, as we mentioned earlier. The other thing that is important to understand earlier in Excel is that you also have formulas, and that's what perform those calculations. So for example, the formulas in Excel, this is very important to remember. All the formulas start with an equal sign. Let's do a very basic calculation at this point. Let's say on B2 we have 35, and then on B3 we have 56. And now on here on B4, we want to get the total of these two values. So one of the easiest way will be to do here is just like we want to put in a formula. That's that formula starts with the equal signs. Okay, and then you add sum the function as a and open parenthesis and B2 all the way through B3 in this case. They are represented in a column, and then we hit enter. So I simply select the range B2 and through B3 and then hit enter, and then now the notice is 91. If any of these numbers change, then the total will be updated automatically. So that's the basic idea of spreadsheet. So we have the workbook and then the worksheets. Now those worksheets here in the bottom, you will be able to navigate from left to right once you have more. When they don't fit in here, you can navigate to the left and the right, and you can also have the scrolling bar to navigate within the same worksheet. If you wanted to rename those worksheets, you can simply right click on them and then choose to rename them as Ebrima, and so on. One of the tips before we proceed any further here is also important to remember that the best way to learn the application Excel, beside going through this tutorial, is to basically click on different functions and see what's available and what each one of those icon does, and then try select stuff in here and think of with it, and it's not gonna break. You're just gonna know then where things are located. So stick with me at this point, and now we will continue to more of the details application features and learn how to do some of the calculations. So we start with some of the basic concept and do some of the calculations in here. I'm going to utilize the worksheet that I also. So keep in mind that you can control the worksheet by clicking from this link to move from one to the other, or by clicking on the next page button. If you click this, it will take you to the next page. Otherwise, you can just select from the basic ones. This section, I'm just gonna go some of the basic features in Excel, some of the like adding to calculate the values, formatting the worksheet, and using various formulas such as sum, maximum, minimum, average, and count. So let's assume we have this data here in Excel. I simply type this. There is nothing magical about it. You just have to type in the sets of value and then insert this value. So these values are the first thing we're going to learn here, and learn how to format these values and numbers into currency. So all that you have to do is you select your cells that you want to format in a way and set a type of format. We can uh, click here on the dollars and choose the drop down currency here, or choose the drop down here and choose currency. And you can notice that if I choose this currency type, it's giving me D because I am in the Gambia and our currency type is in dollars. I can also format this to make it a dollar currency. One of the things that you need to realize that anything you're doing in Excel has to start with the equal signs. You have to, if you want to do any calculation here, we start with the equal sign and then insert the function. The function could be sum, or it could be something else. And there are hundreds of functions in Excel. We'll get to those later. Then the third part of it is the range that you want to calculate, or what you want to calculate. Now the range is typically expressed by the cell address for it, or the reference to it, the cell's reference to it. For example, if I wanted to calculate these numbers from here to here, that will be E6 through E14. So if I to put here is E6 colon E14, I know that this is highlighted in blue and it's also displayed here in the formula bar. And then we hit enter, and the moment we have equal signs, the functions and the range, and then the area within the range is represented by a column. And then you hit enter, and that is gonna be calculated. You can have those calculated anywhere in any cell as long as it contains a specific formula. In this case here, the easiest will be for us to insert this formula. I will show you the first one by doing this equal sign. Then this will be C6. We need a function for sum, open brackets, C6 colon, and that represents anything from here to here, and that's E6, and then hit enter. That's one way to do the calculation here. The other way to do calculation is by using this under editing here. you have this drop down for some average count, and the max, minimum, and more functions as well. Let's say we want the sum here. The sum, we click on sum, and notice it could select the sections automatically. If you're going to use this feature, however, make sure that it's calculating the right range of cell. If that is correct, you just hit enter, and now it did it for you automatically. Another method to try enter the formula is by bringing the equal sign, the function, and then you can simply select the range you want to calculate manually. Equal sign, sum, and now to select the range manually, and then hit enter. It's give you the value that you need. Do the same thing down here as well. By the way, I have this comment here to help you calculate, so if you're following this tutorial, you can also download the worksheet and follow it on your own. Now down here, we want to calculate all the expenses for January, so we click here on the equal sign, sum, like we learned earlier, open parentheses, select the whole range, hit enter, and it's done. And now we need to calculate the whole month as well, and there is a shortest way to do it. You can use what called the autofill feature. The autofill feature, instead of you having to go through each one of these cells, what you can do is you can copy and replicate same formula. So this is our formula. We can replicate to all the cells downward, or all the cells going from left to right. How do you do that? You have to click on the cell reference here, and then hold the mouse in the bottom right here until it changes to little plus sign, and then just drag it down, and notice it has performed the calculation. One thing to keep in mind here is double check whether those references are correct. For example, here for 80, it's also good to double check whether those calculations are correct. If you double check here, you can know that it's calculating the right cells. Yeah. And this works the same way for anything in sequence. So for example, you have Monday. You drag this down, it fills the day of the week. Anything like January, and it's perceived the same way. The other thing is you could use for numbers. For number, you can hold down the control key, or it do it automatically. Uh, it do it automatically, or you come down here, this little arrow, and fill in the series, and it's do it for you automatically. You can also do things that are in a certain sequence of other sorts. For example, let's say 0, 5, 10, 15, and so on. So you select your pattern that you have, and then you drag it down. And notice this is building this automatically for you. That's how you have the auto function. The other thing is to find the maximum. The maximum is determined based on this value. We want to find which one is the highest number. We can do it with the formula. In Excel, you can click on the formulas here, and then you can see all these different groups of formulas or functions. And click on the function, and then you can see here we have different type of function. Now what you could do here is we could just say we want to find the maximum. If it does start typing max here, we could have type maximum. Now this is comes up with bunch of suggestion. Notice here max, it's return the largest value in a set of value. So you have a set of them here, and it will give you the highest one. Now to learn how to do it, you can also click on help on this function, and it will go on the web, and it will give you a description, some sample, and for the information about any of those, how to do it, and so on. So keep that in mind, and That's how you learn other formulas. We will not be able to go through every single one of them. So here we want to insert to find the highest number. So we'll do the equal sign max. We can double click on it, and then you select the range that you want to find the highest number. So you select your range, and then we don't want to the total, of course, and then hit enter, and the highest number here is 500. If I change this to that, know that all this calculation will be updated automatically. Now if I wanted to get the highest number for this one as well, I can use the autofill feature that we covered earlier. Just simply drag this to the right and we get everything. The next thing, we want to find the lowest number. We want to find the minimum, equal sign, min, open parentheses, and then we select the range for your calculation. Hit enter, and now there is the minimum. Use the autofill feature, and then we're set. Now we want to find the average. The average, you could either do equal sign average, or don't forget as well, we have this top of here under the home tab. Notice there is a drop down here to find the average. No, you can also come here, use this function and click here and double click here. Know that it is trying to select the wrong cells. That's why I like to do this manually. Then you can drag here and select terrain and press enter. We could also do the same thing. We want to count how many numbers are in this row. Equal sign, count, and then hit enter. Enter, and then open parentheses, and we select our range. Hit enter, and it's giving us, let's give us an error message. Now we're gonna do it again. Equal sign, count, open bracket, and then we select our range and then hit enter. Oh god. Oh, something is wrong. Oh, I was bad because I was just giving it COUNT without T. That's why it was giving me error message. Now we can go back and write count, open parentheses, and select our range, and we going to notice that it's going to give us 9 because we have 9 values in this row, and if you click and drag, you have your answers. All of them is 9 except for one, which is 8, because here this cells is empty cells. That's why it make it an 8 value. Okay, so far we learned how to add some of this format, how to format these numbers into currency, and also we learned how to find the total, the sum for a bunch of numbers. We learned the maximum, minimum, average, and count. This is another example that you can explore for yourself, try it on your own, and then you're good. In this section, we're going to learn some of the basic conditional formatting and sections that we want to make our worksheet more presentable. So here you select the whole bunch of cells here in this section, and what you do is you go here on the merge and center in your So I click here and match and center, and it's taking whatever was in those cells and matching all the cells together and centering the contents of that text. At this point, I can make this font larger or choose different color and a lot of stuff. However, I could format the cells by using one of the cell style. It will save your time. Here you can see the live preview that will take place. So I'm gonna choose heading 1. Now the next thing you could do is to select this data and format it by using one of those styles. Now pick one of those styles here and click OK, and notice that it has been formatted to another style. If you don't like that one, you can also go to style and pick something else. So for example, this is slightly better here. Another thing you can do, and we learn another concept, that you can pick the data within a range here, and you can format this data under the home tab here. You can utilize conditional formatting. So conditional formatting is to put chance and pattern in your data using bars, colors, and icon for visual encoding, such as highlighting the important connection values. So there are various things you can highlight, anything greater than a certain range, less than equal to, or top 10 rule, top 10 items. And you can also use data bars. Data bars, notice this is a live preview. Based on the values in each cells, it will highlight it with a specific color so it stand out. And also you could use different scales if you want to see the different scales: yellow, red, green, and also make it even fancier with different icon set. One of the things I want to mention here, you can create your own rule. Just click on create new rules and choose your criteria that you want to apply. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to invest into that at this point. So we're going to move to some additional basic calculation in our worksheet. This next section, I'm going to go some of the other basics calculations, such as adding and subtraction, because these are the key component in any office duties that you particularly be doing with Excel. These are fundamental concepts. So if you're following the tutorial here from the previous session as well, at this point you could click on this basic calculation, or you can click on the next page on the right hand side. Now, at this point, we're understanding some of the arithmetic basic calculation, and we're going to learn about getting a bunch of deduction. So let's just assume we have a bunch of employees here, and this is their monthly paid, and we are getting some deduction 1 and deduction 2. Then we are going to calculate how much they are giving up, and then we are going to calculate their net page, and then the annual paid, and then also the weekly paid that they are supposed to take. So the purpose here is actually to understand how subtraction works, how multiplication works, and division, and so on. Again, like I mentioned earlier, these are fundamental concepts you will be utilizing no matter what work environment you're going to be. In this case, we want to first probably calculate the deduction, the total for the deduction that we learned earlier, equal sign, sum, and then the range here. Hit enter, and that is calculate. Note that this is Office 2016, and it's this feature, it fill out the other values automatically. Now in this case, that's a new feature of Excel 2016. If I didn't want that feature, for now I am going to undo it, and this is what happens. You also, that is not going to take in place automatically. You can drag this down to plug in the previous version of Excel, and then it will calculate the rest for you as deduction. The next current one, we want to get the net page. So the gross paid minus the deduction will give us the net page for this employee. In this case, what we need to do, or what you could do as well, is by doing this manually. So remember that function here, we do B6 minus deduction, which is E6. B6 minus E6. Notice in this case, we don't need to utilize the function because it's a very basic arithmetic calculation we are performing. And then we hit enter, and then it gives us the total here. It's not showing because the column is small. If you double click it, and then you have everything. Notice this is a new feature in Excel 2016. It's time to figure out what you are about to do and it does it for you. This is the autocorrect option. We can choose to undo the calculation column and we go back like the previous version of Excel to calculate one by one and click this portion and drag. Let's calculate here the net income annually. So annually here we're talking for the 12 months for this employee. Now in this case, of course, we can take the monthly paid times 12. So you're using the multiplication concept here. So to represent that in Excel, what we do is we put equal sign, then we take this value here, the net pay, we can simply click on it or type the rents times 12. For those of you who are wondering why we're putting this net page or stuff, is because our table here have been formatted with this special formatting and it's using the label from here. However, it's using this net page here as the reference to this one. It's either one of them will work. So F6 times 12, if you press enter, it's give you everything. One thing to keep in mind is that I recommend you not using static value as a part of the formula. We are using this in the formula because for simplicity we might want to use another reference here and say month and have 12 or 6, have 12 or 6, whatever you put here and referencing this value. If you put here equals to 12 times I13, it will give you a null value. So if you, the reason it's given us null value because we're using I14, it is not part of the cell. So it's a shifting down here. So we cover that in the type of reference when we get to the next cells here. So just use absolute reference by putting the dollar sign in front of the column and to the row and then hit enter, and then it will not give you that error message that you were having before. But we'll get to that. Stay tuned for the type of reference to understand why we do that. So that's multiplication. Again, the equal sign, the against the equal signs, the reference times the value. Now here we want to learn about the weekly pay. We know there's 52 weeks in a year. So what's the weekly pay for Ebrima Sarr here? To calculate that, we could do equal sign and then take G6 divided by and the divided is represented by a slash and 52, or you could have a reference like we did earlier and then hit enter. This is their weekly page, and this is, you can undo the auto filling or you leave it to do it automatically for you. So that's it as far as understanding the basics functions in Excel, arithmetic functions, and adding, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying. Again, it's a very powerful feature and one of the fundamental concepts that you will need in order to successfully use Excel in business or career or whatever you're doing. In this new section, I'm going to use a new feature in Excel called quick analysis. We go here on the quick analysis. At this point here on the quick analysis, I'm gonna show you a little bit how to do it. We have a bunch of numbers here and you can see QCell, GIA, NAWEC, Gambega. Now you look at the bottom right of a selection, that's where you see quick analysis button. Like this, you see here. From there you can explore to see a lot of options like chart, table, formatting, conditional formatting. Simply you are doing that by selecting the range of the data, and now notice you have this quick analysis area here. So you click on it And then you can see here the data bars, very similar to what we saw earlier. You can apply to this color skills. You can apply based on the value in there. Additionally, you could use icon sets, greater values. The other thing you could do here, you can go on the chart and you can see a preview of various possible chart that you can utilize for that particular data. Or you can access the total. For example, if you getting the total, notice here it has a new average column called sum, or counting, or percentages, or running total. So another way of you utilizing some of the functions that we learn manually, but to utilizing from a single click from here. The other thing you could do here on the table, you could create here fancier looking table if you needed to, a pivot table that you can tweak the data in various ways, and we will cover the pivot table if we go to the end of this tutorial today, so that you can get the idea here. For example, notice it's doing pivot table calculation here by various categories here. And then additional functions as well. Then you have also these various type of lines and columns that is going to apply within a specific cell. This is within the actual cell. This is, it's also going to apply lines within these particular cells. And then you can format this. See what happening. You can format this by using various style here in Excel. And like I mentioned earlier, this is a new feature, particularly in Excel 2016. Section, we're going to learn how to sort and filter data in Excel. Supposedly we have a lot of data in this. What we want to do is to sort the data by date ascending. To sort the data, all you have to do is to click on that field anywhere within that column or where the data field is, and then go on sort and filtering, and then choose to sort from oldest to newest or newest to oldest. So we want to order them in ascending orders. So this is sending right here, and you could do that for any of those other cells here as well. Now the next thing that we want to learn here is how to enable filtering for this data. How do we, for example, we want to see only the sales by quad or by sunset or whatever it is, the product we are selling here. So the way to do that is very simple here, and you go anywhere in your data and then click on sort and filter, and then we click on filter, and that enable, we click on filter, and that will enable the filtering of our, let's see, we want to filter by sales rep. All we have to do is click on this new drop down and then pick the sale person. Let's say we want only Smith here, and click OK, and now we notice that only the sales from Smith will show up. And here at this point we could sort it by other options as well. For example, we could sort, use what we learned earlier, largest from smallest. If you want to remove a particular filter, you can click on the filter icon and uncheck that specific filter, and then click OK to select them all, and it's going to display all of them again. The data is not going to disappear, it's just going to filter it. The other thing you can do is filter by multiple items or multiple options by simply clicking here. Let's say we select the Eastern section. That's one filter we apply, and then we are going to also filter by specific rep here on, let's say we want to see Smith again, and then that's the case of filtering by more than one criteria. The other thing that you can do as well is that you can filter by a specific value. If you go here on a specific number, you can choose the top 10, or you can see a value equal or greater than 400. So it's pretty cool. Play with it and apply other options of filtering and other option in there. It's one of the key features in Excel beyond the very basic. Section I'm going to cover different type of references in Excel. They serve as a foundation for learning Excel and utilizing data in Excel spreadsheet. So if you following the tutorial, let's go to this type of references. It's here, and then here in the type of references we are going to tinker with this type of data here. So we talked earlier about the various type of references. For example, if we have a budget of $20,000, and then also we have a decrease in the budget by 5%. So then we want to calculate here the difference. Well, the way to calculate the difference in this case will be by using one of the knowledge that we learned from the previous tutorial, by using the equal signs, or by using a formula here that training D8 times the 5%, which is base 6, and then we hit enter, and notice this is $200, which is correct. If we wanted to use the autofill feature to drag this down, notice what will happen. First, on the next cell we get a blank value. The next one you get this number sign. The other trick here that is you can double click if they are not fitting in here to adjust the cell weight to make it fit in. Now notice that we are giving up from travel here. It was $2,000 and it's 5%, and this is end up being 10 million. What happening is that as we're using the autofill feature here to populate the formulas, what happening is that B8 to B6 is correct, and if you move to this one, B7, it's multiplying this blank sheet. That's why it gives us a blank clone. And if you come here in this one, it's multiplying and notice if you coming to this cell, it's multiplying 8,000 by 4,000, and we want 8,000 to multiply by 5. To correct that, what we need to do is we could use something called an absolute reference. So we have three type of reference typically. You have the relative references, you have the relative means it's gonna move if you use the autofill function, and it will fill the value in a correct way. The absolute references are those that you can go and tell the computer right here that this B6 is an absolute this B9 is an absolute reference. I don't want it to shift right or left or top down. And in this case, to convert it into absolute reference, uh, by putting $sign in front of it. You can put the $sign manually, but it will take a bit of time, or you can just do it by pressing the F4 key on your keyboard, key on your on the keyboard here. Then now we have the $sign as an absolute reference, and I tap F4 again, it's changed to mixed reference. What mixed reference mean? That the column B it's lock, but the 6 is not lock. Type F4. If you type F4 again, know that it's changed to different type of reference again as absolute reference. This because we don't want this 5% to change. We lock it with the $sign and make it absolute reference, and hit enter, and then we have 200, and you drag this down, and now you have the proper calculations here. So out of 2,000, 5%, that's you have to give up $100. So that's the idea here, and we utilize this in the previous section as well when we do the basic concept earlier or the basic calculation earlier. This gives you the flexibility to change this. Okay, what will happen if I choose 7%? What will I have to give up? And now notice right here the table update that you're changing, you're giving up 100. Now the difference here, you can calculate some, and for 7% you're going to give up 1400, and then you can, that's the beauty of using absolute reference or relative reference. Oh, sorry. The reason to it's good is that if you have a lot of data that you have to do it manually, it's going to take a longer time to complete it than just to use the formula. So the absolute formula, it's really good. So use it and tweak it all the time. Now, how can you use the mixed reference? Here is an example of using the mixed reference here in Excel. In this case, we'll create a multiplication table. We want to multiply the rows starting with B21, and we want to let the left column change, but not the row numbers. If you want to multiply this times this and then continue it this times that and then this times that and give us all the possible calculation here, but we want to do that by using a single formula to design this. So basically in the first one we want to lock the rows here so that B21 does not change. So we do the equal sign and it is B we 21 we click on it and we want to lock the rows. We want dollar sign right in front of 21, and then we want to multiply it by a22 by a22. Here we want to lock the column. We want the column to move from one another and let the rows shift. Now we're bringing dollar sign in front of a like that and then hit enter. Now notice the first one is right. It's gonna do B21 times A22, and that is 1 times 1, it's 1. And if we go to the right here and use the autofill feature to the right, and move to the right here, we see here C21 times A22. It's correct. So again, that's the point here, was it went from B to C, and it's gonna move to D, E, and all those type of stuff to keep things in sequence. So I could replicate this all the way to 10. And it's giving me a, this is, notice all this thing is correct, but here it's giving my error message because 8, 9, 10 is in a different row. So I have to correct that by changing the value again to and align them in the same row. Now we put them in the same alignment. Now notice that if you replicate this, it's going to be correct. Now it's correct. So you can see that it's 1 times 10, that's 10. So go down here, our formula is correct in the first cell. I could also replicate it downwards. Now what it's doing here is saying move from B21, which is static, to A23 and A24 and on A26 on and on. We haven't moved from the B column, that's why we already have B. If we move to the next one and we drag this down, if we move here and we drag this down, the formula is still going to be constant. You can see that E21 times A24. And so on. Basically, we're able to create here multiplication table with simply by setting one calculation or one formula using mixed references, and we're able to replicate everything. So there are other uses on how to use the mixed reference and the absolute reference, but the most common one is the mixed reference and the absolute reference that we utilized earlier. But the mixed reference we can see here is quite powerful in knowing how to calculate or design them. Again, this was uh, in this next section. Oh, in this next section, we are going to learn how to create charts here. We have here a varieties of data in our worksheet and we want to create chart for them. So the concept of creating chart is pretty simple. Basically, the way it works is just to select the data and then you click on charts. Now the option to create a chart is to click right on the button, come here and click charts like the quick analysis tool that we see, or the other concept that we serve as a better concept. It's, uh, it's to come here and go to inside and choose recommended chart here. The idea is to use the right chart for the right type of data. Sometimes it's very easy by mixing the data if you represent them in a wrong type of chart. So typically if you're dealing with percentages, you want to use pie chart. If you're dealing with a long data range, which includes a lot of value and such, that you probably want to use a line chart. Sorry. In Microsoft Excel here, there is also this recommended chart. So based on the data that you have selected, it's gonna give you what Excel recommends. In this case, notice I select part of the column here in the first row and I click OK, and that's the chart for just this set of data. Just rice, chicken, and beans for in-store sale. If I want to tweak chart further, all I have to do is choose different design. I could also choose to change the color and use the different color scheme, and you can also change the layout if you prefer different layout. Notice it's putting the numbers in various area. It's giving you a live preview, and you can also add different element as well. You can also use the formatting and click here to change the formatting property and also additional options for this chart. Those are some of just the basic concept on how to create chart, how you can incorporate it. Now the next thing I'm trying to show you here, in some cases you might have installed sale, website sale, and 3 sets of data. Like you select a range of data here, go to insert and recommended charts as well, and it will pick the recommended type of chart that might look handy for you, and you click OK, and here's a group chart for the set of data that you select. Now of course you can drag this and move it elsewhere in your worksheet or with you working with, or customize it even further. The other type of chart that you could create here, this is now example of sales for cross multiple of years. In this case, you want to select the data and then you go to insert, you go to insert and recommended chart, and you see the first chart that Microsoft recommend is the line chart because you're dealing with years. Now pick the one that you prefer and then you can have the different chart, like you can tweak it, customizing, and choose various designs to make it more visually appealing for your audience. Notice you can also switch the rows or the columns, and you can change this data selection as well, including changing the type of chart. Notice under the quick layout that we discussed earlier, you can include additional values and options within your chart. The next example here also goes against year or complete item. We can select the set of data and then go on the insert and choose recommended chart, and at this point, the first option Microsoft giving us is a column chart. And because know that if you choose pie chart here, it will probably not work quite as well, because everything is pretty much very close to each other. Now click on it, and there's the column chart for this specific year. The next option is multiple tests. This is very similar to what we used earlier in this one. And with this type of chart, we can simply select the data and insert the recommended chart, and in some cases you can see a line chart, but the ones that Excel recommend is this one. In the cases where you want to keep a specific area in your of data in your chart, what you can do is, let's say I want to create a chart for test 1 and test 3. Although you have test 2 in the middle, what you can do is to hold down the control key while selecting the data range. What you can do is to select this range down here and hold the control key, and then select this range down here and go to insert and choose recommended chart. Oh, sorry. And choose recommended chart, and then because I am selecting an empty value instead, I am sorry. Notice now it's giving us different chart that you can see line chart that gives us only test 1 and 3 and skipping test number 2. So the key here is to hold down the control key while selecting data. That's chart with Excel. Think of tweaking them. You can customize them further and think of how to utilize them better. Section, we are going to demonstrate how to use the flash file feature in Excel 2016. This will perform certain functions and tasks automatically. We learned about one of those earlier here as we thinking that earlier with data. Here we notice that, for example, to calculate the annual income is the net page times 12. That's F6 times 12. That's our example earlier, and you hit enter and notice this whole area got automatically filled. So the calculation that we perform later is dropped down automatically by the autofill feature or the flash fill feature in Excel 2016. So that was one of the function in flash filling some kind of range of cell that we're potentially or we're going to autofill manually later. Now in this case here, we have the email address of bunch of individuals and we don't have their first and last name. Let's say we need that for building spreadsheet of sorts. Now we want to separate them. In this case, what you can do is you can start typing here for some of the first name like Ebrima, Ebrima, and the next one we type Malang. As we starting type Malang, it's going to flash filling the rest of the rows. It's determining what we are doing in this cell and looking other subsequent cells and whether it could save us time. And now if you're happy with it, we simply hit enter and notice it's all complete. Now the next one here, we said last name. Now come here, let's start typing the last name, Sarr, and then we go to the next one, and once we start typing Jaju, and it gives us the same thing, you click enter, it's do it the same thing. That's flash fill feature. In this feature, I'm going to calculate how we can get value formula to calculate from another worksheet in a spreadsheet. So basically we want to calculate, for example, training expense, get the total from another worksheet here. For example, here under January, and we want to post it on the main sheet. So we are creating a summary worksheet from value and references from other worksheets. So here how it's work. Basically, you have summary worksheet here, the training for January, March, April, and all the type of thing. And also we have this worksheet for each month, personal January expenses, and you're keeping track of all these expenses throughout of this month in here. And so the way to this work is that typically, let's first illustrate this in a different way. In each sequence, let's say we have a value of 80 here. Under here, let's say anywhere else under here, I want to post this value via formula somewhere else. Now take note of the steps that I am performing here. Very easy to post this 80 here other than typing 80 here. All I need to do is equal signs and then click on the self reference. That is H6. Equal sign, click on the self reference, and the third one is to click enter. Now 80 is here without me having to type it. Now here it works the same way. We have the training expenses, and those expenses are under this other worksheet for January called January. I go here, I put equal sign where I want my formula posted. That's number one. I go to wherever the value is. For example, this is training. This is January. This is the total. I click on it. And then the third step is hit enter. I can repeat this process also for office supplies. Again, equal sign. Go to wherever the worksheet is. Choose office supply here. Enter. It's just as easy as that, and you can repeat that process. Now what happened is that if I went here my office supply, let's say they spend more than that, and now I have 799 instead of 299. Now see, if I go to my summary worksheet, it's automatically updating. That's the beauty of the functionality. You can do this also in another way by using what we call name references. So the way that works is, for example, here on the computer expenses, this total here, I want to name it. I want to give it a name so that I can reference it in the future in another location. And this comes in handy for large worksheet where you can say 2016 budget total. You could name that total and you could call it from anywhere else in the worksheet. And here we say computer expenses, January computer expenses. So what you can do here, you go here where you have the total and existing formula within that worksheet for January, and we go on the formulas here and we choose define name. You just give it in a name, and we're saying just this location and this formula, we're going to call it something. Click on name and then call it January expenses. Notice what it's doing. It's using this as absolute reference. I click OK, so we need something meaningful. Here has to have a lowercase, and we click OK. Because we cannot have a capital letters, we just must use lowercase, and I am using cap letter, so we have to change that. That's why it's giving us error message. Now we go to define function and we give it name JANEXPENSES, and now we save it. Name already exists, and because I save it for January exists during my practical, so I can save it another thing. Let's say computer expensive. EXPENSES, and then it's also giving us error message because I have a space in between and it's not going to accept it. So now it's safe. If we go here to cross sheet calculation, we can do it simpler than we do it this option by using a name reference. Now at this point we are ready to use the name reference that we saved from earlier. Let's assume we want to go here and call the January computer expensive. What we can do, we can simply go on the formula area, then we choose use in a formula, and then we can see any one of them we can call from here, January expensive, and just hit enter. The other option we could have done was we could have hit the equal sign and then just start typing Jan, and notice it will pop out as January expensive. Double click on it, hit enter. It will pull the value that you have from here, 699.6. And if we change one of these as this total changes, as this total changes, if you come here, you notice that it's gonna change. The total is changing. That is the two type of cross-sheet calculation and referencing by using the two method. One of them is manually and the other one is by defining a name for those references. In this section, I'm going to demonstrate how to calculate percentage in Excel, and I have a different scenario here. First calculation will be calculating the percentage where part is calculated against a total amount. For example, in a case of students who score 87, Ebrima Sarr, and possible of 100 points. Now, what is the percentage here? The other one would be example of a return on investment. For example, you invest certain amount of money in a stock market or whatever. At the end of the year, you get to know how many percent did you gain or lose there. And the third part will be to calculate the percentage of sales increasing or decrease sales, or calculate the percentage of a salary or discount or to a whole. So let's go for the first example first. We have, for example, students Ebrima Sarr that score 87%, and the total number of points is going to be against 100. In this case, if you want to represent what percentage they got, we could do this without using Excel formula, but it's on purpose in this case. So we do equal here, and the way you do that by the first number. In this case, I'm going to do it manually here. That's B7. I'm going to do it manually, equals to B7 divided by the possible points, that is C7, and all you do is to hit enter. Notice it's giving you an empty value, a null value for the rest, because there is no value here. So we're going to do the undo auto calculation, and notice here you have to format this into percentage, and then notice that it will give you all this in the percent. Now that came to 87%. This Ebrima Sarr score 87%. Now this is a little bit more complicated. We want to calculate the return investment on percentage. So let's suppose in the beginning of the year we invest $1,000. Now at the end of the year we got $1,200, and we want to determine as to what percentage did we get at the end of the year. What was the return of investment? Again, format this to be percentages, and then you put in the formula. In this case, we're going to put in the equal sign. Basically, the way we calculate is, if you remember your maths, we do the end of the year minus the beginning of the year divided by what we invest initially at the beginning of the year, and that we put that in parentheses. Basically will be C16 minus we put that in parentheses. Okay, C 16 minus B 16 divided by the initial investment, which is B 16, and then we hit enter. Notice the return of investment in the first month. Oh, sorry, I'm bad. I make a mistake in entering my formula. Let's come back. I enter the wrong formula. It's supposed to be equal signs, open parentheses, B16 minus C16, close parentheses, divided by the initial investment, that is B16. And now hit enter. Notice that I have a return of 20% for the first time. And then if you wanted to calculate the next one, you can do it manually, or you can do it using the autofill, like it do it for you, or you can let Excel do it for you automatically. So let's try this one manually and do it for ourselves. The other way you can do this is open brackets, initial invest minus fee investment, and then divided by initial investment, and hit enter. You see I have a wrong value again because I enter a wrong formula. Let's try the different formula and see what will happen. Okay, let's try enter the correct formula. Here what we can do, because before I didn't open the bracket, now we bring the equal sign, open bracket, the initial investment minus the end of year return, close bracket, divided by the initial investment, and hit enter. We see our return investment is 25%. Now one thing we could do is to do the auto fill function to complete the rest for us. And you could, in this case, they lost 20% of the investment. That's why it has a minus 20%. The third example we want to calculate, for example, we have these employees. This is Ebrima Sarr, and this is their annual salary, and that they had, and now we want to give them a bonus, or we want to increase their salary. And for the other employee, we want to give $1,200 in addition to what they currently have. Now we want to calculate what percentage of increase that they got. The way to do that calculation, it will be very similar to the first example. You just do the equal sign and then the bonus divided by the salary, and then hit enter. So they are getting 12%. The first employee is getting 12%, that's Ibrahim Ejao, and Lang is getting 6%, and they are getting accordingly as we see here. So that will be the percent plus or minus here. The other thing to keep in mind as well as you're working with these percentages, besides formatting these percentages, you might want to have decimal points to at least 2. So you want to increase this by 2 areas. So format all of this by increasing the decimal point for all these cells. For example, employee 2 get 5.95% increase in their salary. If you had to figure out as well as you are increasing the salary of employee by 15% to 12% or whatever, this is how you can do it as well. So basically this is going to be increased, and we are going to put the number statically at this point, but we're going to do the equal sign here, the value times the percentage point. The percentage point in this case, we want to do 0.07%, and hit enter. It's going to do the calculation. Now if you want to increase everybody's salary by 7%, this is what it will be for each one of them. Now if we want to know how much is their total salary gonna be, we could go back and modify our formula to be the salary times 1.07. The salary times 1.07, 1.07, and now hit enter. You see if the salary increase, now it's going to be 10,700 here, and so on. So the idea that I want to demonstrate here was how to calculate it by a specific percentage, so that you can see increase in salary, and this increase by adding one in front of it, that will be the new total of the employee, instead of adding another column to add another new total, to do it all in one cell for this calculation. So hopefully that is helpful, and these are three different scenarios of calculating percentages in Excel, and it's to cover pretty much of all the basic calculations of percentage out there. Section, we are going to learn about using financial function in Excel. We are going to focus on three of them in Excel. We know there are hundreds of them, but for the sake of time, we can cover all of them, and I am very tired. The first one is PMT, interest payment of rate for a period of time, and the IPMT, interest payment over a period of time, and the PPMT is a principal payment for a specific period that you're calculating. As we learned earlier as well, to find out how to use a specific function is by going to, let's say over here, we want to insert a function. We search as to what we want to search for example, PMT force. And notice PMT says it calculates the payment for a loan based on a constant payment and a constant interest rate. So you can also click on help on this function, and Microsoft will explain this further by explaining the syntax for it and some example or remarks, that all of type of things that you can explore. You can explore this for yourself as well, but the way it will work here is that for PMT, for example, it's need these values in black here. You need to post those in black, so you need to figure out the rate. What is the interest rate per month? So the key there is per month. Notice there here the interest rate here is the, when you get a loan, let's say it will be 1999 or 5% or 30% loan that you're receiving, but yet the rate that the computer needs is per month. Therefore, we need to do a little bit of extra calculation here. The NPER, it is the number of payment that you're going to be paid. That would be, for example, if you're getting a loan for 5 years, that will be 60 months. And if you're getting a home loan for 30 years, that will be 360 months. And the PV is the present value, and that's mean how much is your loan. You're getting $100,000 loan or $10,000 loan. PV is the present amount that you're borrowing. But before we do any of this calculation, we need to have some sub calculation. For example, for the rate, that needs to be for the month. This is to utilize something very similar to this. To, let's say my interest rate is it's 5%. Unless you have to format this in percent before you forget to do that. Click on percent here. That's interest payment per year. That's gonna be 12. That's gonna be 12. And interest payment per month. Now you're calculating this basically by dividing C13, which is the percentage rate, divided by 12, or by the number of payments, which would actually, we use 12, we could actually use the reference for it, which is B14, which is C14, and then we hit enter. Now notice the other thread here as well, that we are calculating this. with a bunch of increased numbers of values here, because I think in the business world they use up to 5 digits after the period. So here we have a little bit more than that. We could kind of control it by this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that will be our payment in the interest rates in this month. Then the number of years, we are taking the loan for 5 years, and that's mean if you multiply C14, which is the number of payment per year, times the number of years, C14 times the number of payment per year, that's C16, and then the PV is the total amount that we are borrowing. In this area here, what we're gonna do is we're going to calculate the principal payment, the PMT. So now what we do in this case, we go here on the formulas, insert function, and then we find the PMT option, click OK, and then we go here on the rate. All we have to do is click on C15 because we calculated the rate already. Then the NPER, the NPER is 60 in this case. We click on C17, and the PV, present value, is the amount, and leave everything alone. We click OK, and it's come to $188.71 for $10,000 for 5 years. That's at 5%. Now if we going to do this for 15%, notice this went to $237 over 5 years. Now if we are borrowing a loan for a house for $300,000 and we are paying it over 30 years, our payment at 15% would be $3,793. But the mortgage for payment, it's not up to 15%, so it will be close to 5% or 7%. Why it's important to get the good interest rate so that you can know. That's one way to calculate this. Now the other way to calculate the PMT in here without having to do all this work here, it's you can do this by using the formula this way. We go on the inside and then we choose the PMT function, and then it says rate. We want to get the rate, but the rate has to be calculated. Imagine we don't have all this calculated, so we just want to calculate it. So we said it's 5. Actually we click on the rate. The interest rate is 5%. Let's change the interest rate. Let's change the rate to 5. Now let's continue with the same interest rate so that it can tally with our new results. Now, we didn't pick the right cells, so we have to pick the right cells before we insert the formulas. We go on the insert. Now we have it here. Now it says rate. We want to get the rate, but the rate has to be calculated per month. So we say it's actually, we click on the rate here. Business rate is 15%, and then we need to divide that by 12 by each one. The NPER will be the number of payments. So if you know that you are getting this loan for 30 years and you could do 30 times 12, so you're going to say total number of payments is going to be 30 times 12, that's 360, and the PV will be the present value, the amount of your loan, and then you hit OK here and we get the same value here. So this is a little bit more work when you're doing it, but this also, it's good if you're doing it in a manually way when you have problem doing it. Now interest. Now we want to know how much interest we're going to pay on the first payment. Our payment was 37,930 per month. Now we want to know the interest payment for a particular period of time. IPMT, and then click OK. Now we want to figure out the rate. For the rate, we're using the worksheet that we prepare already. We have C15 as our rate. If you want to know the period in which we paying the interest on, in this case we want to find the first payment that we made. How much are we paying on interest? So we put just number one, the first payment. The NPER here, it will be the number of total payment, and the PV is actually the value you're borrowing. Then go here and click OK. And now notice on the first payment, if you're borrowing $300,000 at 15% for 30 years, on the first payment you're going to pay $37,500 in interest. If you're going to change this to the second payment, note notice this is going to be less. So of course the interest is going to be dropped from payment to payment. So for the, let's calculate, if you're paying for the 359 period, you're going to pay only $930 interest rate. That's why the interest rate is very good. So it's really good to have a good interest rate. If you taking any loan, ask them to give you a good interest rate. Now let's see the principal payment on a given period. We can do the subtraction from here, but we just want to do it using Excel. Let's return this back to the first payment, and now here we want to use the formula and search for PPMT, and we are going to use rate, PER, and number of payments, and the present value. So we have the rate at C15, and the period of payment is the first time, and the number of payment, that's C17, and the principal payment is this. And to know that it's come to $433.32 only towards our 30,000, and we are paying 35,500, and only $433 goes to our 300,000. The rest goes to the interest. So you say it's very good to have a good interest rate. When the more the interest rate goes less, the better for you. Let's say an interest rate of 5%, and see what will happen. You see, you only paying 12,000 for the first payment, $500, and 3,604 dollars goes to the 300,000. In this section, we're going to learn how to use the if formula. Here, we're setting our criteria and saying if employees reach 3,000, 20,000, they're going to get a bonus of 20,000, true or false. And then this one, we're going to set yes or no. And the next last sets, we're going to display yes or no. And the last set, we're going to display the bonus amount. If they get yes, they're going to get the amount. If they don't get yes, then they're going to have zero. This is how it works. So basically, you have the sales as they are part of the worksheet, and then you have the criteria you are determining. That's our criteria. $20,000 could be $10, could be $100,000. It's up to you. And then here you are saying this is how much they will get if they pass that criteria. To use the if statement, we can do it by going here on the formula tab, and then we click on insert function. You could also click on the logical. You could also click here on the logical, and then you can use the if function. But we want to use the longer way, and then we can start here. In my case, it's actually showing here. I don't need to type it, and it's here. Now, if it's check whether a condition is met and return on value if true and another value if it is false. So that's what we want to do here. So we say post towards true or false. So we click on it, and now it says what is the logical test. The logical test, we have to say if if this guy is here for John, if B6 is greater than or equal to the criteria here, then if that is true, we want to put in there the words true. Notice we have true or false. So we just want to put the words true. Or we could say it is true. If not, false. Now the other thing that you need to keep in mind here, notice that this bonus criteria here, we don't want this to change. And if you remember from the type of reference we made, we want to make an absolute reference. We want to make absolute reference for this one so that it will not change. Now we want to use the $sign by using Shift and F4 to lock it to the criteria 20,000 to be an absolute reference because we don't want this to change. So we're saying if this value is equal or greater to 20,000, we're gonna post the word it is true. Otherwise, we're gonna post the words false. And then the other thing we did, we just used the absolute value reference. Let me click OK. Now this is said it's true. He made $20,382. Now use the autofill feature to move down to the other ones. And it says George here, he got only 19,000, so he doesn't get the bonus, and so on. So that was one method. The other method is to post here yes or no. The words actually yes or no. It's going to be very similar to the previous options that we just did. Click here on insert function under the formula tab, then click if and click OK. And we do pretty much what we did earlier. We click on this reference here if B6 is greater than or equal to the criteria 12, and we make that as an absolute reference by pressing F4. Then we put here yes. If it is false, then no, and then click OK. And notice the first one they did, they get a bonus. The other ones they don't get a bonus. This one get a bonus, and the other one. And it that reference here, what we're gonna do here, we're actually going to post the actual amount, which will be this amount. That's $250. And if they don't get it, we put a 0 on it. Again, we go on the formulas tab, click on insert function, and click on the if functions, and then we said if this reference B6 is greater or equal to the criteria, make it an absolute value. Don't forget to make an absolute value, then they get the bonus, which is B13. We want to do that as an absolute reference as well, otherwise they get 0. Otherwise here they get 0. And notice the first one get $250 bonus, the other one get accordingly. This one gets 0 because the criteria was not met. You could have another column here to calculate the totals and for their income and such, and that will complete it. Thanks for watching. I am going to do more of tutorials in our next classes. Stay tuned and follow the tutorial. Again, the best way you can learn this app is to We tweaking the apps and using different formulas and clicking each one of this bar to know what they do and how you manipulate with the data. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Your presenter, Ebrima Sarr, and I will hope to have more of this in Excel and Microsoft Word and Microsoft Office PowerPoint as well. Thank you.